Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. It's a super cold and snowy one here in Albuquerque, a perfect day to snuggle in with your love or cuddle up with a good book. That's what I intend to do after this. I just got off of a Zoom meeting that was a bunch of poet laureates, 11 poet laureates from around the country and Canada. And right before hopping on here, got to listen to our very own Albuquerque poet laureate, Mary Oishi. So that was very cool. The Poet Laureate Love Fest, if you look for that online, you can probably find a recording. There were some really great poets, some youth poets. So I've been spending my day enjoying poetry. And now we're here with Tanaya Winder to talk about the re-release of her book, Words Like Love, which we'll get into in just a moment. I want to give just a few more minutes in case other people would like to join, and I'll give you an update of sorts. Bookworks is still closed for browsing. Even though Albuquerque is moving into the yellow, we're going to wait it out a few weeks and see how things go with the COVID numbers. We have to get the store back into some kind of shape. We've been closed for browsing for a year, so you can imagine the store looks like a tornado ran through it. It's basically become a shipping and receiving center and a place for Cooper, Danielle and Wyatt's little toddler, to run around. So it's not exactly in prime time shape for shoppers yet. And we also just want to wait and make sure that these reopenings are going to last more than a couple of weeks. So for right now, we're still just doing shipping from our website and curbside service. So you can order a book on our website and pick that up. We're open 4 days a week for curbside, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday from 10 to 2, and then Wednesday evening from 2 to 6 after work. So you go to bookworks.com, order your book, and then you can choose shipping or pickup options. Until tonight at midnight, we have free shipping on orders of $40 or more. So if you want to go grab a few last minute Valentine's gifts, the code at checkout is BOOKLOVE. With your $40 purchase, you can ship it to yourself or to anyone else for free. So I will put some links into the chat to buy Tanaya's new book. We're going to hear a little bit more from her. As you all know, Tanaya Winder is a poet that Albuquerque loves. We've had to share her with our neighbor to the north, Colorado, for quite a few years now, but there may be some developments in the works that will allow us to have her back full time. Maybe we can talk about that. Tanaya, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited to talk about this book. It means a lot to me personally. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that. How are you doing, miss?
Okay. Hi, I am great. I'm excited to be here. It's really cold in Colorado right now. It is like 5 degrees or something. So not ideal for moving, but I'm really excited. So everyone, hi, I'm Tanaya. I am a citizen of the Duckwater Shoshone Nation. I'm also Pyramid Lake Paiute, Dene, Black, and Southern Ute. I grew up on the Southern Ute Reservation in Ignacio, Colorado. Went to college in California, came back to UNM for graduate school where I got my MFA. And that's where my poetry career really started. And so I'm excited to have like my first reading of this re-release at Bookworks, one of my favorite bookstores in the country. And I'll be back in New Mexico soon.
Yay! As some of you may know, Tanaya has been the longtime director of the Cub program up at CU Boulder, and she has a house here in Albuquerque too. So she's going to be moving back to a new home, and hopefully that means we'll get to see her around a little bit more when we're past this pandemic. Okay, so some of you may own the first edition of this book like I do. Words Like Love was created as part of the UNM Press new series. The late John Crawford, who most of you probably remember as the publisher of UNM Press, had been out watching poetry, all the young youth poets in Albuquerque and some of the slam poets that we know through ABQ slams. And he started to talk to me about this young poet that he was really interested in publishing, Tanaya Winder. And I didn't know much about Tanaya's work at that time. I had been working at UNM Press for many years, and then also with John at West End doing publicity. And we loved putting together these new series books because they were all books by first-time poets, 99% of which are poets of color. And so we were really excited about Tanaya's work, and John launched into this project of working with her. And I ended up sort of inheriting this. So Tanaya and I got to work on this book from beginning to end, putting it together, putting this beautiful cover on it. And it was just a wonderful, lovely, fun experience, even right down to this, the trademark, the ISBN barcode, which I like to remind myself that I have a first edition of this because it has a barcode that's a sticker, because we were so excited to get this book out, we forgot to even print a barcode on it. So that's how I know I have a limited edition of this book so close to my heart. Now tell us about the new book, Tanaya. Is it the exact same book? Are there new poems inside? I know the cover's different. Do you want to give us a gander of that?
Sure. So this is the new cover. Both covers actually are designed by First Nations Indigenous women artists from Canada. This artist is Chief Ladybird on Instagram and Twitter. I love her work, but yeah, new cover, just like cute new little fonts in the headings. I actually got to make some small edits to some poems, and that, it's just interesting the way things change over time. One poem that actually I got that really helped me just get known in the spoken word world, or at least helped give me spoken word confidence in performing, that I performed part of in my TED Talk, had some lyrics from an R. Kelly, I Believe It Can Fly song. And, since then, with the Me Too movement and abusers getting outed, and then the R. Kelly documentary on Lifetime, just not feeling comfortable having that reference. So I redid that poem to have some Nina Simone lyrics, and yeah, just small changes like that. But it is mostly the same, and it's exciting.
Nice. Now, I know this book has lots of different meanings of love within it. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the different sections and what ideas of love you explore?
Sure. So I started writing this book in graduate school, and I came to poetry like many of us come, for healing, for processing grief and different traumas. I started writing poetry after my grandfather passed away in high school, and then continued writing into college. And then I ended up losing a really good friend of mine to suicide. And this book became my way of just processing that and really seeing just how, that ultimate hurt, that ultimate lack of self-love, where you feel like you can't even love yourself enough to want to still be here. What are all the different types of love that get a person to that point? So this book, Lessons in Frailty, that's the first section. That one is about familial love. That's just thinking about how I learned about love, about ancestral trauma, about those wounds that are passed down, and how those things really affect your own love of self. The next one is languageless learning. And that one, is about, I would say, community love and the lack of community love, like those poems that talk about murdered and missing Indigenous women. They talk about environmental love, like the things that we do to the earth with fracking, and the things that can happen, the traumas that can happen within community. And I guess also colonialism, how it affects your community love. One of my favorite poems, and when I start reading, the poem I usually always start out with is Learning to Say I Love You, and about language loss and that cultural love and where that comes in. The third section is Forbidden Acts. I actually got to update the quote on this one from another poet I like, Billy Ray Belcourt. And it has the quote, "Colonialism broke us, and we're still trying to figure out how to love and be broken at the same time." And so that section is more of that intimate romantic love, and dealing with those things. And then the last one is the order of things, and that's just kind of bringing it all together. That has a quote by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and that's the final section of the book. And I'm really grateful to Amanda for helping structure the book when it first came out, because I always just wanted to do too much. I just was loving music. I was like, I'll call this playlist or this song. I don't even remember what I was doing, but I know I was trying to do too much. And Amanda, just with her brilliance, helped me rein it in. And it's like, okay, I think these are the sections. So that's just one of the exciting things about doing a book too, is just having experienced people with that good eye, like be able to help you like rein it in and make it into something digestible.
That's my favorite part. I love that part. I think it's because I'm kind of an organizational freak and I like for things to fit and be orderly. So I remember doing this with your book and also with Ebony's book, printing out all the pages, a poem per page or two in stacks, and just on my living room floor, laying it all out and just seeing how it flows. And your work is so easy to flow together because there is just this wellspring and this idea of love under everything. Even those poems you talk about, colonialism and generational trauma, those things still explore those same concepts. So I have to say it was a fun and somewhat easy process to thread those all together. And I love to see that this book's been re-released. I mean, we worked so hard, and I know you worked your tail off promoting this book. And as most of you poets know, that's the difference between a successful book and an unsuccessful one as far as sales go, is just promoting. And Tanaya sold thousands of copies of this book pretty much single-handedly back in the days when you were on the road all the time. So what's it been like this last year? I know you were a traveling maniac before. What's it been like this last year in 2020? I know you've been kind of settling in, thinking about settling into a home, but what was that like for you, going from being like traveling every week to probably not traveling much at all? What have you been up to?
Yeah, it definitely was a hard transition, like just having, like, you rely on that income that you get from doing gigs and from traveling. And then I think just wanting to pivot to online, like the artist collective I'm a part of, we did some online Zoom sessions and webinars. And then that was nice because we could give each other feedback on how to play with the Zoom settings to try to make sure the audio was okay. But then you have to deal with the lag of time if there's internet issues. And I think for me, I was immediately just trying to be like, okay, can we do these things online? But I think other organizers maybe just weren't as comfortable at first and just like, no, I think we all thought the pandemic wasn't going to be as intense as it has been. But I would say around June, a lot of people just were like, okay, well, let's do things online. And I feel like I almost kept the same schedule. And the funnest part was for Native American Heritage Month, where most of my incomes comes from, because most people are like, let's book a Native person during that month. Normally I would have had to pick and choose what gigs I did, but because I didn't have to fly anywhere, like I could do two things in different states on the same day. And so that was fun. So I'm grateful I've still been able to find ways to connect, but it really just made me miss like being there in person. And I think I just took it for granted, There have been some years where I've probably spent more nights in a hotel than in my own apartment traveling. And so it does wear you down. Like you do get burnt out with those things. And I just remember thinking halfway through this, like, I'm never going to take this for granted again. Like if I get to be in a bookstore and give a poetry reading, if I have to wake up at 6 a.m. to travel to another state to do a performance, I don't want to take it for granted, because I really miss like connecting with like local organizers or fellow artists and youth on the road. And that's been the toughest part, is just not being able to connect in that same way. And a lot of the work I do is like youth workshops. So it's easier to like connect with a student who might be more shy if you're there in person and you can read the room. It's 10 times as hard having to do it through a screen, I would say.
Absolutely. I think this is moving into like my 80th, 85th virtual event since March of 2020. And I love the interaction. I do definitely get a lot out of it too. But yeah, there's just something so different about having the live interaction with people, being able to read their emotions, being able to kind of know when they're getting bored, when you should move on. So it's been a heck of an education for all of us. But I'm so glad that we're able to do this. I'm glad that we're able to see you before we can see you live again. So, how was the experience of re-releasing your book? I want to mention that it is out with UNM Press. University of New Mexico Press was the longtime distributor and still does distribute West End Press books, despite West End not publishing anymore. So I'm really glad that they were able to pick up that book. Also, they picked up Sai Hoa. I don't know if you know him, but he was also in the new series. And I saw that they picked up his book, and he will be reading poetry for us on Wednesday. So we're excited about that. Tell us a little bit about that, about working with UNM Press and what that might have meant to you, having gotten your MFA from UNM. How's that been being picked up by University Press?
Yeah, it's been awesome. I've loved it. I really like that my first book was published with a smaller independent press because I feel like maybe I got to see more of the inner workings and just got to learn more about like the happenings. And it's nice. You always hear horror stories about people not getting to pick a cover they're happy with, or maybe that's how it was before. But I've loved in both of my circumstances with West End and UNM Press getting to choose like a cover that I'm happy with. Um, and I think it just helps to as well, like it was so sad to lose John and to lose the press and to not really have, the shelf life, like, or to think my book wasn't going to have the shelf life I thought it deserved, having a book, like when you're a poet, it's so hard. Like I feel like some certain people don't take you seriously if you not published. And then the next step is like, well, do you have a book? And it's all this pressure to apply to contests or submit your book and get rejected. And it's all just a matter of timing, who's going to read your book, what's their mood that day, what's the timing. And for John and Amanda to work on the book the first run, it was amazing just to see like the love and the reception. And I feel like I was still early in my career as a writer and as an artist. And so I feel like that helped give me some legitimacy and helped me get a lot of different readings. And it was nice to have something like tangible to sell when you go visit places. Um, and then, when it ran out of copies, it was just like, okay, what do I do now? So because I'd been traveling so much, I just was like, okay, I don't want to go through the whole thing of trying to submit a book. So I just self-published my second book. And that was really nice because I got to actually make like profit from my book. And I self-published that through Kindle or KDP Publishing with Amazon. And then just really wanting to, I don't know, I feel like just things kind of come back when you need them to, like definitely have a larger social media following for whatever that is worth these days in the world we live in. Definitely have gotten out there more. I feel like I have more of an audience or supporters than I did, back when the first book was published. So I was really grateful for UNM Press. I'm working on my second new full collection that will have a home with them as well. And so this book was part of that, well, two separate contracts, but that was part of the process is having them thankfully republish this book, the first book, and then getting to let my next book have a home with them. I feel like it takes off a lot of pressure. And I feel like, university presses are more known. And so I think whatever comes next, I don't think I'll want to like do academia, but if I did, I think it would be helpful to have UNM Press. And I'm just really grateful because Albuquerque is really like, it's going to be my home. It's my home. Like I love the literary community there. I love the artist community. And so being able to have like my publisher in the same city that I'm in, like makes me just really happy.
Yes, we're so happy for you. I'm glad to hear that they signed you up for another book. I know it'll be nothing but a success. All right, folks, we've got a few more people who've joined us. If you're just tuning in, we're with Tanaya Winder. She is about to read us a few poems from Words Like Love, originally published by UNM Press and just re-released from UNM Press. Tanaya, what poem are you going to read to us? What are we going to start out with?
So I'm going to start out with this poem called Learning to Say I Love You. And it came from a conversation just wanting to learn, my language from my grandmother and just how difficult it is to say some phrases and just trying to record her and stumbling over my own tongue. And, when those moments happen, you don't think like, oh, I'm going to write a poem about this moment. But just when those memories come back to you, like that's when you're like, okay, this deserves some space. And my grandmother recently passed away in October, so it's a very sad loss for all of us. We're still grieving and processing, but I feel good that she got to see the book and like hold the book with the first print through West End. And this poem I'm about to read is also in Joy Harjo's new Norton anthology. So, that makes me happy. I love writing, and I hope I keep writing until the day I die. But I was just like, okay, if I never write again or get anything published again, like I have this book and I'm in an anthology that I'm proud of. So I like to just start off with this poem just because it honors my grandmother and just where I come from. And it's called Learning to Say I Love You. My favorite conversations are with my grandmother while she teaches me words in Indian, as she says. I ask, how do you say, where did you go? And where are you going? Questions that layer my tongue in ash, reminding me of fire, the taste. Each time I speak, the slow burn of every loss I have witnessed cracks my lips. Go and going, axe singed into my bones. So I ask, teach me I'm coming with you. So it sits rock heavy in my mouth, because my tongue is at war with history. Boarding school, kill the Indian, save the man, acts of colonization, strained pronunciation when I want to say, take me with you. It dissolves before I can stomach the sweetness of language, ours. I am losing. I am lost, lodged somewhere in my throat between decades of broken syllables. Teach me how to reach the ones who are born already running. Teach me how to talk to the ones who need it most. Dear universe, gift me words that linger, softly like dusk. There must be a phrase to contain wherever you go, whether or not you know where you've been or where you are going. And that's just, it's one of my favorite poems because it's about my grandmother and just wanting to learn to say those phrases, where did you go and where are you going? Like those are literally questions I asked, like, processing my grief from my friend, remembering just one night going out and him just taking off running and coming back, like, where did you go? And for me, like that relates to, him actually leaving this earth. And, when you lose someone you love, like you want to like take a part of you with them, like send a part of you with them. So like, teach me, I'm coming with you, or take me with you. And for me, when I say teach me how to talk to the ones who need it most, like that's my youth work, that's working with my students, just never wanting to lose somebody the way I lost my friend, and like just wanting to put all of that onto words. Like, words can harm, but words can also heal, and how can we activate that? All right, so the next one I'm going to read is called In My Mother's Womb. And for me, this is about, that ancestral trauma, that healing, and the wounds that are passed down. And this is from the first section. 1. I came into this world incomplete, born with a hole in my heart. It happened in my mother's womb. Doctors have a name for it. Call it congenital cardiovascular defect. My grandmother says it's the moon, emptied of its many faces. It is against nature. Creation has a will of its own. Or is it a pact from the past made long ago? It happened in my mother's womb. The blood vessels closest to my heart didn't develop the way nature or the creator intended. When the doctors say hereditary, my grandmother responds ancestrally, in prayer, songs gifted to her like birds. My mother and I do not know the words, but when grandmother sings, she is calling on horses to run in on clouds, to protect us, to save us. 2. Long ago, there was a man who loved my great-great-great-grandmother. The love connected two people, two spirits so deeply it shook the earth. I imagine it, the way it should have lasted long after the moon. Yet he left her. His leaving made this hole pass down in my grandmother's womb. And the next one I'm going to read actually comes right after that poem. And this is definitely going to age me. And that's okay, because I'm finally, I can't dye my hair anymore now with COVID. So I've made peace with that. But when I was little, I had paper dolls. I had Barbies too. But I really liked something about paper dolls. I remember my aunt taking us to Virginia City in Nevada, and we would just go look at the old buildings, the old opera house. We would stop at this bookstore, and we would just get paper dolls. And that's what inspires this poem. It's called Lessons in Frailty. At grandmother's house, we played with paper dolls, punched along perforated lines, dressed in their best, tabs held secure. Our dolls formed choirs to sing about the space between raindrops, the pockets of stillness. In the storm's thickness, there are pauses to recover from inevitable wear. Then years slip away. Dolls tatter, but grandmother refused defeat. We glued broken arms, taped together small tears, but they seemed to rip further the more carefully we held. Paper doll messengers intent on teaching process, fold and release. We wandered generations in that two-dimensional realm where we didn't know indentations would remain, that we'd search for decades, trying to figure out when grandmother became silent as paper, aging beyond repair. And I'm gonna find the next one I'm going to read. I was actually thinking about this poem just the other day because I saw this lady I know on Facebook was selling some of her beadwork to help another Indigenous sister she knew who needed an operation to help her have a child. And I was just thinking okay, well, I'm going to try to sell some books, and I want to be able to enter that raffle so I can pay it forward to this other lady paying it forward. And I know that comes from my mom. An example of that is in this poem that was inspired by an experience I had with my mom when I was a young girl. It's called Raw. Once we broke down at a gas station. Mom put coolant into the car as a woman approached. In her arms, a blue cooler much bigger than her small frame. I thought she was going to fall over from the weight of it, arms coiled tightly around her precious cargo. As she got closer, she revealed small packages wrapped in white paper and masking tape. An exchange of words, a hug, and then a handoff. Cash for 10 packages. What did she want, Mom? What's in those packages? Meat. Meat? Frozen raw meat. Turns out the woman was getting beaten by her husband, punched, kicked, fist to her cheeks until her skin rubbed raw. This went on for years until this morning. She decided it was the last morning. He'd given her a shiner on one side, a black eye on the other. Routine, open the freezer, grab a steak, place on face, help reduce the visibility of the bruising. But today, with flesh on cheek, she decided to wrap every single piece of meat in her freezer, put it in a cooler, and take whatever she made to get away. Why do you buy meat from a stranger? So that she could finally leave. And I know that poem is more intense because it's, it shows like the ugly sides of what isn't love, like hurting people that harm. But I wanted to read that one because it was something that had come to my mind the other day when I was trying to hustle to sell, to help somebody else hustle who is helping somebody else hustle. And it just feels good to be able to do it like that, like to help support community. All right, so I'm gonna read some stuff from the last section of the book. This one is called Teaching the Riff. I like to share this one because actually it's when I first moved away from Albuquerque, this is one of the first poems I wrote. And it's fun, like when it kind of happens in that magic way, you go down a rabbit hole and then you're doing all of this research and then the words just like flow onto the page. This one's called Teaching the Riff. Mamas put in Davis during children's naps, time to let the miles of music unfold into sleeping ears. Mamas fear this world where babies are born already confined. Waiting in lines of funeral processions, the patient air reinforces lessons of Indians playing along to historically provided scores. The notes read, broken livers, diseased hearts, and distended bellies in newspapers or television. Babies need the music. The rhythm and blues teach improvisation, the realization life is making and creating. Embedded in the call and response of crying shames reside voracious cold trains, bodies freighted with ache. Mamas want to teach children the rift between what goes on outside these man-made borders, the real world where cars are named after Indians, Navajo, Cherokee, and Tacoma. They know the consequences of the American dream. Reality, just like those cars, they too will end up buried in graveyards if they're not careful, sooner than expected. So mamas pray their children dream blues like cracked cups. Broken may not be good luck, but reminds us of survival, an object lesson. If you leave, leave blaring like trumpet, dented in all the places to sound your instrument loud for the trail of knowing behind you. History's rifts may be blinding, but babies need reminding when arms are strong enough to unravel muddy waters still needing to be crossed. They are ready to embrace the splitting open like saxophone, howling into the white space or ocean, all to empty the darkness inside, or fill it with their own middle ground between the milestones and giant steps they'll want to make in life. So whenever you think blues can be tasted with hands wrapped around a bottle until they're wasted, they'll remember their mamas ingrained into their hearts unexpected deviations. Their internal drums will beat louder than the drunken syncopations as they fall into no longer sweet grass laying flat on backs, looking up at the Indian and the moon. In their sweat-drenched sourness, loving and wondering what's so damn wonderful about a world where we are whole notes unraveling.
I like that one.
Me too. That one always leaves me out of breath because I wrote the lines so long. And for me, music is just a way to process as well too, like processing loss in this poem, processing the concept of blood quantum, because I never understood, oh, you're only an eighth, oh, you're 1/26. Like, I don't want to tell like my children you're 1/8 of a person or you're 1/26 of a person. And for me, like it was easier for me to conceptualize that, like in terms of thinking about like whole notes and eighth notes and things like that. Let me see one more that I'm going to read.
Are you still working on some music on the
Yeah,
side?
that's what I was going to say. Like, that's the interesting thing. I'll read one. Like, I feel like if one day, if I'm old and I continue to be successful, then maybe somebody can like write a dissertation about all this stuff connecting. But you'll see like some of the themes like in my music and in my poems. And it's been nice. I feel like I gave poetry my everything for a few years, and then I kind of stepped back from the writing world for a variety of reasons, but just needing like to protect myself and my energy and space. And I just, found music and I love it so much. And then now I feel like, um, with this like book getting re-released, just a lot of new things are coming into my orbit, like just different opportunities to write and publish. And so it's kind of hard, like teeter-tottering, it was poetry and then it was music. And I still love music and I want to like finish my album, but then the writing's like, but here's other opportunities. So I'm trying to just trust the universe. But I'll read this one. It's called Awakening. You died while I was sleeping. And I climbed further and farther into the night to ask the stars, are there limits to loving? In silence they answered. Unspoken, I placed grief on the backs of constellations, rearranged my thinking, put together the lights to make the sky read. People grow up out of love and leave people behind. You left. I lost you when you died, and maybe, yes, maybe love can be rendered in the countless times I awoke that night to hear your voice crying on the wind that carried it. Or was it my own that woke me as it echoed, come back to me, come back to me, come back to me. You died while I was sleeping, and I can't remember what I was dreaming about, if I was dreaming at all. And that phrase, come back to me, that's like the title of one of my songs that I'm working on. And it was like the first song I actually wrote on guitar when I first started learning. And it's a really important song to me because it's about, I guess, trying to call back all the pieces of yourself, call back your spirit if you ever feel like you've lost yourself. And it's really exciting because I dream of having a choir and orchestra perform that song one day, but I have such an amazing producer here in Colorado, and he like was able to use just my voice, his voice, and his girlfriend's voice to make it sound like an epic choir. So I can't wait for that one to come out. But I just see like a lot of my poetry and a lot of my songs being in dialogue with each other.
Definitely see that influence of hip hop and music there. Are you still doing your work with hip hop artists and with other talent? Do you still have your talent company going?
Yeah, so we do have our artist collective. We're actually going to make it a nonprofit soon. And that's really exciting. We got invited to apply for a seed grant to start it. We're going to be looking to get some land, hopefully near the Four Corners, maybe even more, hopefully near Albuquerque, so we can have a space where we can have like, I just imagine a room where like you can get that dry erase like paint and like poets can come, we can do workshops, people can write on the walls, we can have a recording studio, have some like permaculture, grow some seeds, like have indigenous chefs come and teach how to cook what's on the land. And I'm really excited like for that to happen.
Awesome. That would be amazing.
Sorry.
That's okay. All right. Well,
Um,
I think we can wrap up here pretty soon. I usually like to leave a little bit of time for questions. So if you all have any questions, if you want to put those into the chat. I do also want to mention real quick that we just wrapped up our Valentine's Poetry Contest. I think we've done this 8 or 9 times since I've been at Bookworks. And this year, Tanaya judged for us. We had about 20 entries total and narrowed those down, sent her the best, and she narrowed it down to the top 3. So, 3rd place went to Riley Ellison of Sandia Prep for Man in the Moon. 2nd place went to Cheryl Guterl, who's on this call. Her poem was called Stripping, amazing poem about making a bed. And then 1st place went to Mary Dudley, who I don't think is with us right now, but her poem was about vow renewal after 52 years. And I know this is her personal story of being married that long to her Valentine. I saw her posting photos of things she baked for him this morning. So congratulations to the 3 winners. Everyone's going to win a gift certificate to Bookworks. And thank you, Tanaya, for reading those poems. If you have a question, raise your hand. You can type it into the chat. We have a comment from Alex Hinkle saying that Words Like Love is her all-time favorite, or Alex's all-time favorite. I'm not sure if this is a man or a woman. I used to teach middle and high school education, and the last 3 years of my dear mother's life, I read this book to her over and over again. We had many favorites. Thank you for reading. Always sweet to hear comments like that. I know this book's made a big impact in a lot of lives, as books do. So we're so happy to see a new edition so that it can stay in the world and soon join a companion collection forthcoming from UNM Press. We'll look forward to that. All right, T, do you have a poem to take us out?
Yeah, maybe I'll actually just play a song to end it because it's a Valentine's Day song. But okay. Yeah, stay tuned. Add me on social media if you want to. I actually am working with an Indigenous animator to animate one of these poems. The Milky Way escapes my mouth. So I've seen like the sketch of it, and just I kind of gave her free rein, like whatever comes to mind with this poem, and she did like what she came up with. Like I was like in tears. I was like, we got to submit this for some competitions. But I'll close out with a poem for you guys. I mean, a song.
Okay.
But I guess it started as a poem. All right, I haven't played in a while, but I know my work can be kind of heavy, so at the end of the happy song. I actually wrote this for my fiance. It's called Thanks for Loving Me. All right. You told me I was brave, even when I felt afraid. You told me to stand tall, get back up when I fall. And I just wanted to say to you, thanks for loving me too. Thanks for loving me. Thanks for loving me. Thanks for loving me too. I never thought I'd find the one I'd want for life, someone with wounds that matched mine. I never known a feeling quite this strong. Finally found where I belong. And I just wanted to say to you, thanks for loving me too. Thanks for loving me. Thanks for loving me. Thanks for loving me too. And I love you more each breath I take.
Yeah, thank you guys. Hope that ended it on a good note.